how, and Clifford, you as well, how do you look at a petroglyph? Do you look just only what's on the rock, or do you have to take in the surroundings, or is it a combination of both, or sometimes is it all one way or the other way? How do you interpret some of these things when you look at? Start with you, Clifford.
Well, one of the things that is quite prevalent is that places where there are not enough rock drawings, it continues over to the next, maybe another cliff or another formation. It continues. In some cases where I've encountered is that it was tell one part of the story, sort of like a chapter, and then you go to a different place and it continues that theme or whatever they're doing. So depending on the geological formation at that time, they continue to do that. So that's it's basically it's split up, but it's a continuation of one story, so to speak.
I see. And how about you, Jeff? How do you interpret them?
Oh, that's right. Also, when we look at the rock art, we're not just supposed to look at the art itself there on the panel, but I believe what the artist is trying to tell us is we're supposed to include the landscape along with it. For instance, if we have two triangles, and you look behind this panel, you will see two triangle mountain hills, pyramids, if you will. And there seems to be, it's the way this panel represents, there's a serpent inside these two pyramids, and with an orb right above these two pyramids. So when you're looking at the panel, you're not just supposed to interpretate the panel, but also the whole landscape, because the artist is including the landscape, because he's not just talking about this, but he's talking about the whole landscape.
So it's like looking at him with a wider vision.
That's right. It's more of like a three-dimensional type setting. He's including the landscape in with the art.
Okay. Very interesting. This is a good lesson for you folks at home. You taped an image to me, and I honestly, I forget what you termed it, what you called it, but to me, everybody has their own interpretation, I think, on some of these things. But to me, what we're going to see next looked a lot like a thunderbird. In fact, it was red in color, and but there are also many other interpretations, I'm sure. And you also had some interesting daytime triangular formations. So this stuff's pretty interesting. So if we're ready with this one.
Okay. Here we found some spirals, some petroglyphs on this rock. Now, in my opinion, this rock is very significant. When we see spirals, some of the spirals represent doorways. And I believe that this petroglyph is representing a doorway into the stone. Here, if you notice, we have stairs that seem to be going into this doorway. Well, if you look on this rock right here, we have steps. They look like stairs. Kind of resembles these steps here. And where are they leading? They're going into the rock. Here we have some petroglyphs here. Very fascinating, very beautiful. We have a spiral, some spirals, and some either teeth or comb.
of each other.
And sometimes they become one, right?
This one will come down to the bottom right now.
Well, we had two images. We had the red thing. How would you guys interpret the first one then?
Well, that red one, when it was coming at me, it came right at me. If you look in the clip there, I'm looking out my window towards the mountain. Now, I'm living at least about a mile away from South Mountain. And it just came right at me. And as soon as it went past the windowsill, it just went straight up. It didn't keep going. It went right at me and straight up. And something that I found real interesting in that is it seems it's like an orb, but then it shifts shapes into like this cross. If you notice, it has this cross, and then it goes into a ball, and then a cross. And it was, to me, it was really fascinating. It was really awesome to see. You know, it was really close.
One thing about that first one, the red one, is if you looked at it, the wire, the electric wire, was in focus, and so it was some distance away. So if that was in focus, the UFO was in focus too. But even though it looked fuzzy, because it was producing its own aura of energy, in this case a red one. You know, that's because a lot of people say, well, why couldn't he get it in focus? It was in focus. That's the way it looks.
Most of them do look like that, you know.
Yeah, and the triangles. I guess you've probably seen your share of those, Clifford.
Oh yes. One of the things that is quite fascinating about those is that they have their own. They look like in a different dimension type thing, and the way it's interpreted in the American Indian Southwest tribes is that because they're from a different dimension, there are only certain people that can see those things. And like I've indicated many times before, there'd be 10 people there, and you're watching this thing, and you ask the other 9. They said, "Are you seeing this?" And they say, "What are you talking about?" And so there are only certain people that can see those things and pick up that connection.
Yeah, I believe that too, because I've heard these stories where there'll be 5 people standing side by side. A UFO flies by, and only 3 of them can see it because they don't have the construct in their mind for it. The same way the natives couldn't see Columbus's ships when they first came because there was something so new they didn't have a construct for it in here.
That's right.
And in a little while they saw it, but not immediately they did. Okay, have to move on relatively quickly here. There has been a very bizarre phenomena that has been seen down in Mexico from time to time, and in South Mountain, thanks to you, Jeff, that you've also videotaped. And in Mexico, they call this thing the flying man, and you understandably call it the flying snake because it does slither around in the sky, and I think of it as a flying politician, but that's something else. Anything that slithers around, it kind of reminds me of a politician. But anyways, we won't get political here. So when and how often have you seen this phenomena?
Oh, wow. When I first started seeing, when I first started investigating South Mountain and actually, watching it, we saw these worms, these humanoids, these flying serpents many times. Sometimes these orbs will actually chain themselves together to form a serpent. So it was very fascinating.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jeff. So let's take a look. So if we're ready, let's go ahead and view that clip, please.